I slammed into the boardroom where my two-faced cousin sat, his deceitful smile barely concealing the trust fund manipulation that could ruin us all. And I felt a surge of desperation as raw betrayal and impossible choices collided in the charged air. In that heart-stopping moment, as I hurled accusations and defiant challenges, I made a choice I could never take back. A choice that promised to shatter our family's fragile legacy forever. Chapter 1. The Spark Amid the Merger. Marianne sat in her corner office, the morning light casting a cool glow through the glass walls. As she reviewed the emails about the upcoming merger, her determination grew. She was more than a cog in the corporate machine, she was the spark for change. The merger was not just a business deal. It involved family legacies and buried secrets. The boardroom buzzed with tension that day, and whispers hinted at stakes beyond dollars. Enter Damian, her enigmatic cousin, known for his charm and elusive nature. Their first encounter during the discussions wasn't private, it was amid a turbulent meeting. As Marianne presented her restructuring plan, she noticed Damian's calculated gaze, stirring a mix of intrigue and caution within her. Throughout the meeting their eyes met, blending business with personal history. Marianne's heart wrestled with professionalism and the pull toward Damian. After the meeting, as she drafted a memo in the corridor, Damian approached. "You handled that brilliantly, Marianne, yet I think you held back," he teased, his words a challenge. She replied coolly, "Perhaps I reserve my best for those who understand the stakes." Their exchange was a strategic dance, each word laden with personal and professional implications, hinting at their family's complex past. Damian stepped closer, his presence both comforting and disarming. "Sometimes business sparks can light up fortunes, or burn everything to the ground," he murmured, echoing Marianne's internal conflict between ambition and caution. Their eyes locked with shared history and unruly desires, leading to an impulsive, meaningful kiss, a defiance of professionalism. The kiss lingered in Marianne's thoughts, a mix of promise and potential betrayal. She realized the merger was not just a business maneuver. It was a turning point for their family legacy. As she returned to her office, the memory of the kiss lingered, leading her to wonder if she could trust the spark between them. The answer, like the merger, remained elusive. Chapter 2. Masks at the Family Trust Meeting. The drawing room of the ancestral estate was steeped in an unspoken gravity, as family members took their seats for the long-anticipated trust meeting. Heavy draperies and polished mahogany furniture created an atmosphere in which every gesture was amplified, every word measured. The air resonated with an energy that bordered on the oppressive, a shared understanding that nothing about the meeting was as straightforward as it appeared. As the meeting commenced, the patriarch of the family, Frederick, opened the discussion with a calm yet commanding tone. His carefully chosen words on the merger of the family business barely skimmed the surface of the issues underneath. Yet beneath the formal pleasantries and financial forecasts, murmurs of trust fund manipulation began to filter through the room like dark whispers. Each relative's expression was subtle and guarded, their smiles strained as they concealed more than their ambitions. The protagonist sat quietly among them, her eyes alert and perceptive. She could sense that every participant, while outwardly cooperative, harbored secret motivations. Particularly, her cousin Adrian was a study in contradictions. To the casual observer, his demeanor was relaxed and self-assured, but the protagonist had glimpsed the fissures in his carefully orchestrated facade during previous encounters. Now, as he offered a reserved smile and an affirmative nod at every mention of the trust fund's potential, his eyes betrayed an unsettling spark of calculation that only deepened her suspicions. As the meeting progressed, tensions mounted. Discussions that began with benign financial details slowly morphed into contentious debates over resource allocations and revisions of the merger's fine print. A murmur of discontent grew louder among the family members, a low humming background score to a drama that was unfolding in real time. The protagonist listened intently, noting how reliant the arrangements were on the opaque decisions of a few. It was as if there were a hidden script written to funnel the trust fund into channels known only to a select few, leaving the rest with little more than formalities. The crescendo of the meeting came unexpectedly when an offhand remark by an aunt hinted at a very deliberate scheme to manipulate the trust fund. Her words were veiled in caution, but struck the protagonist with a sudden clarity. a realization that the merger involved more than just well-intentioned business growth. The very foundations of the family's bonds were at risk, destabilized by greed and ambition. The protagonist's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination as she resolved to understand what was truly at stake. After the meeting adjourned, the halls of the estate remained thick with unresolved tension. In a quiet corridor away from prying ears, the protagonist found herself face to face with Adrian. The encounter unfolded in a tension-filled silence that spoke volumes. The flickering of passers-by's footsteps seemed to underscore the importance of their private exchange. It was here that the carefully constructed masks began to fall away. Adrian's voice, low and earnest, broke the silence. "I know it isn't just about money," he confided, leaning slightly closer as if to shield his words from any accidental interception. The protagonist felt her pulse accelerate, not just from the proximity, but from the weight carried by his statement. His confession, delivered in a tone so raw it bordered on vulnerability, was an unexpected crack in the towering edifice of his controlled demeanor. The intensity of the moment grew as the murmur of the estate receded into the background. While doubt warred with desire within her, she found herself drawn towards him, torn between her burgeoning mistrust and the magnetic pull of his sincerity in that rare moment of openness. Without a word to counter the admission, their resolve weakened. In a single, fleeting moment where their shared complexities and hidden regrets converged, Adrian reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. The contact was electric, and though fraught with the uncertainties of their entangled loyalties, the spark was undeniable. Time seemed to suspend as their eyes locked, revealing the unspoken acknowledgement of both the treachery encircling the family trust and the emotional labyrinth in which they were now hopelessly ensnared. Words became superfluous when a passionate kiss bridged the distance between them. The kiss was not a declaration of absolute trust or surrender to vulnerability. It was more an escape from the suffocating ambivalence that had wrapped around them all evening. It encapsulated their shared understanding that, within the labyrinth of family politics and furtive schemes, they had discovered something authentically real and dangerously intoxicating. In that charged instant, with the echoes of the meeting and the murmurs of manipulation still reverberating in the background, doubts persisted. The protagonist's mind was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions, the lure of intimacy, and the nagging alertness to hidden threats. Yet, softening in that fragile moment, the kiss hinted at a promise to navigate the treacherous waters of family ambition and deceit together, even if only temporarily, in the sanctuary of their embrace. As the corridor returned its stillness, they slowly parted, their brief connection leaving behind questions that were yet to be answered. The masks of the family meeting might have been put on again, but between them a fissure had formed, a quiet testimony to both the fragility and the complexity of shared secrets. Chapter 3. Unraveling Deception. The day had begun with a cool, deceptive calm, the kind that belied the seismic shift waiting just beneath the surface. In the quiet, sterile office of the legal department, Elena sat alone with a sheaf of documents that challenged everything she had believed about the trust fund. At first glance, the papers appeared routine contracts, memos, figures neatly recorded, but discrepancies soon emerged as glaring anomalies. The numbers simply did not add up, and what was most disturbing was the suggestion that funds had been deliberately rerouted, manipulated by someone with intimate knowledge of the family's affairs. With shaky fingers, she traced irregularities in the financial records. Every page whispered betrayal and corruption, and as her pulse quickened, she realized that this deceit extended far beyond a mere miscalculation or clerical error. In the quiet solitude of her investigation, every misaligned digit on the page was a reminder that someone had been living a double life. As the weight of disillusionment pressed down upon her, Elena felt herself reaching a precipice. The documents hinted at a collusion that seemed to involve one person closest to her own cousin, Alexander. His name surfaced repeatedly in correspondence and cryptic footnotes, almost as if guiding her to a truth that was both unbearable and inevitable. Her mind raced between professional resolve and personal betrayal. How could someone so closely linked to her, a person whose presence always provided solace in the chaotic world of family and business, be capable of such subtle deceit? The isolation of that moment was abruptly shattered by a soft knock on the door. Without waiting for permission, Alexander entered. His eyes, earnest and laced with concern, fell on the scattered documents that now painted a troubling picture sprawled across the desk. Without a word he stepped closer, his presence bridging the distance between them. In that vulnerable silence, Elena felt the warmth of his hand gently resting upon her shoulder, an unspoken insistence to share the burden of painful discoveries. "You're not alone in this, Elena," he murmured, his voice a mixture of care and regret. The words, though comforting, carried the weight of an ambiguous history, a love long buried under lines of professionalism and the taboo of forbidden feelings. In that charged moment, the air between them thickened, laden with emotions that defied the simplistic definitions of right and wrong. The documents lay forgotten on the desk as the closeness between them rendered the outside world irrelevant. For a brief, trembling instant, her world narrowed to the uncertain solace of his embrace. As the conversation resumed, the duality of their predicament seemed to crystallize. Alexander confessed that he too had noticed oddities in the financial reports and had quietly been investigating them on his own. His tone, laced with a bitter mix of disappointment and hidden affection, left Elena reeling. It was as if both were wrestling not only with the disintegration of a trust fund, but also with the erosion of a trust that had long bound them together. Every word exchanged, laden with half-truths and unspoken fears, deepened the crease of conflict in her heart. The ethical codes and family loyalty now blurred, merging with personal desire into a labyrinthine puzzle that defied a simple resolution. As the clock ticked on, the tension between them escalated until it was impossible to ignore. In a moment of fragile clarity, both surrendered to the heated pull of their long-concealed attraction. The clash of desire and betrayal boiled over in a kiss that was as tender as it was desperate, a desperate attempt to connect, to hold on to something that now seemed more valuable than gold. Their lips met in a charged, conflicted caress that echoed both promise and impending sorrow. In that interlude, the memory of previous shared moments surfaced, the stolen glances during family gatherings, the secret smiles that hinted at love amidst chaos. Yet, the kiss also encapsulated the bitter sting of deception, a realization that every tender touch was now tinted with suspicion. When they finally pulled away, their eyes met in a silence that spoke of unanswered questions and the closing of old chapters. Elena's mind whirled with the implications of what she had uncovered and what their forbidden embrace had rekindled. The lines between personal loyalty and professional duty were dissolving. The trust fund, once a symbol of stability and legacy, had become a testament to the deep-seated treachery that could unravel a family's very foundation. And in the midst of financial manipulation and legal subterfuge, an intimate betrayal had emerged, intertwining with their personal lives in ways both dangerous and deeply human. Left with more questions than answers, Elena knew that the coming days would demand difficult choices. The documents had exposed a secret that threatened not just the merger, but her trust in those she loved. As she gathered the scattered papers, her fingers hesitated on a particular note, a fragment of correspondence that hinted at even greater deception. With a heavy heart, she realized that the personal and the professional were now irrevocably entwined. As night fell outside her window, the glow of the desk lamp illuminated her resolve to face down the double dealings, even if it meant confronting the tender parts of her own heart that had been ensnared by both passion and treachery. Chapter 4. Confrontation at the Breaking Point. The rain outside the grand estate's windows pounded like the steady heartbeat of a betrayed family, echoing the storm of emotions gathering inside the old boardroom. Today marked a pivotal moment, the day when secrets, manipulations, and unspoken resentments would no longer remain hidden behind the polished veneer of the family trust fund. The room, filled with heavy tension and hushed whispers, brimmed with the collective apprehension of those who had unknowingly become entangled in a web of deceit. At the head of the table, the patriarch's voice, the voice of tradition and certainty, summoned everyone to order. Yet beneath his calm exterior, it was clear that the cracks in the family's unity had deepened. Clara, whose eyes had borne witness 2 years of unspoken betrayal, sat rigidly across from Damian, her cousin. Their history was as intricate as the financial records that now threatened to dismantle the foundation upon which generations had built their lives. Not long ago, there had been flirtatious glances and secret smiles. Now every look brimmed with suspicion, and the weight of past promises defrauded by greed. The meeting began with routine reports of profits and losses. But as the figures were displayed, murmurs spread. Unusual transactions, unexplained accounts, and investments that lacked transparency emerged one after another. The room's atmosphere shifted from cool professionalism to palpable outrage. Family members exchanged worried glances as the evidence mounted, and attention turned to the suspicious activities that traced back to one person, Damian. Fueled by both a sense of duty to her family and a personal need for the truth, Clara rose from her seat, her voice quivering with restrained fury. She spoke with precision, each word charged with the weight of betrayal. How could you manipulate the trust fund for your personal gain? Our future, our legacy, everything we have built together has been jeopardized. Damian's face flushed with a mixture of indignation and guilt, but before he could speak, the room seized in expectation as other members of the family began to voice similar accusations. With each statement, the facade of unity crumbled further, and the truth, long concealed by charm and deceit, was forced into the light. It was in the middle of this heated debate that the catalyst for years of hidden passion and manipulation converged into a confrontational moment that neither could escape. After the meeting adjourned its formal proceedings, the air remained thick with animosity and sorrow. Clara, heart pounding unevenly, as if trying to outrun memories of past intimacy, followed Damian into a secluded corridor away from prying eyes. Here, under the dim glow of a single lamp, the urgency of their confrontation crystallized into words they had both avoided for too long. You always thought you were doing what was best, at least you claimed so, Clara said, her voice a tremulous mixture of heartbreak and determination. But when your actions threaten everything our family stands for, you not only deceive us monetarily, but you also betray the very essence of trust that has always defined us. Damian's eyes flashed with conflict, an intricate dance of regret, anger, and vulnerability. His voice, though low, was earnest. Clara, I never intended for any of this to sour what we once cherished. I believed that by controlling the funds I could secure a future where our ambitions could be realized. I thought I was protecting us from outside forces, from the inevitable collapse that would follow if we left it all to chance. The irony was stark. The very relationship that once thrived on secret smiles and whispered promises was now being unraveled by the same convictions that had once united them. Love and loyalty wrestled with ambition and guilt in a battle where there was no clear victor. Clara's expression hardened even as her eyes shimmered with tears of frustration and pain. Your actions have consequences far beyond what you intended, she whispered, each syllable laced with both sorrow and resolve. You have not only robbed the trust of our elders, you have betrayed the trust we had in each other. In that fragile moment, the weight of their shared history bore down upon them. The vulnerability of a decade-long bond was laid bare by the crisp, cruel reality of the present. And then, as if destiny itself inflicted a moment of bittersweet clarity upon the agony of betrayal, Damian stepped forward. The space between them, already narrow with unresolved tension, dissolved when he reached out, his hands trembling, as if pleading for redemption. The conflict of love and envy, honesty and manipulation, was encapsulated in that charged, tearful kiss. It was a kiss born of desperate hope, mingled with the deep pain of betrayal, a kiss that acknowledged the scars of the past while hinting at the possibility of forgiveness. In that fleeting union, both were forced to confront the undeniable truth. Even amidst the chaos of deceit and ambition, there still flickered the embers of a love that refused to be extinguished. As they slowly pulled apart, the storm outside seemed to mirror the tumult within, relentless, bittersweet, and unyielding. In that charged silence that followed, both knew that this confrontation was not the end, but rather the precipice of a future where trust, once broken, might someday be rebuilt. Chapter 5. Truth, Redemption, and a New Beginning. The office lights dimmed as twilight settled over the city, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the long-held secrets in both their hearts. In the quiet aftermath of the explosive revelations, the air between them was thick with unspoken questions and tentative hope. The merger's fate remained uncertain, but here at this precipice, each step taken was a turn toward rebuilding not only a business deal but a fractured familial bond. Elena's pulse steadied as she sat across from her cousin, Marcus, in the boardroom that had witnessed more discord than unity in recent weeks. The confrontation that had nearly dissolved their shared dream was now evolving into a raw moment of reckoning. Marcus' eyes, usually so guarded, flickered with vulnerability. He began, his voice quiet but resolute. "Elena, I need to tell you something. You deserve to know the truth behind everything I did. I wasn't just driven by ambition. I was battling my own insecurities. The fear of not being enough, the shame of having longed for recognition so desperately." His confession hung in the air. Elena listened, the weight of every misstep and hidden motive settling around her like mist. Never before had she seen him so bare, so human. It wasn't the cold, calculated betrayal that had hurt her the most. It was the realization that the man who had so often shielded his actions behind ambition was also capable of remorse and regret. As Marcus continued, mingling sorrow with clarity, he acknowledged how the pursuit of success had blinded him to the genuine connections that truly mattered. "I realize now that I was trying to prove something to myself more than to anyone else. I set traps within our deal, hurt those who cared for me, and in doing so I lost sight of what was real." Elena's own voice trembled as she replied, "Your ambition, however fierce, cut me deeply. But in this moment I see that we both have been prisoners of our own fears, yours and mine. I have clung too tightly to the notion that truth could be unearthed only when all confessions were laid bare. I spent years believing that holding onto everything would somehow protect me, only to realize that withholding only deepened the chasm between us." Her words were not just an admission of pain, but the start of liberation. A painful reckoning had swept her away from the treacherous allure of deceits and forced her to reframe forgiveness not as weakness, but as the doorway to healing. A long silence followed, punctuated by the hum of an air conditioner working tirelessly in the background. Marcus shifted, leaning forward with a quiet intensity. "I want to offer you my honest apology, and my commitment to make things right. I believe that if we both set aside our past transgressions, we can reshape not only the failing merger, but also our relationship. I want to rebuild trust, brick by brick, even if it takes every ounce of determination in me." His voice resonated with a conviction that, though tentative, hinted at a possibility of redemption. Elena felt a subtle shift within, as if the tumult of betrayal was giving way to a cautious forgiveness. Each confession, each tear shed in that cold boardroom, was a step toward rediscovering the people they could be, both as business partners and, more importantly, as family. She looked deeply into Marcus's eyes, now brimming with a sincere desire to be better, to move beyond the pitfalls of past ambitions. "I'm willing to try," she said, her tone steadier and more hopeful than it had been for the longest time. "We have a chance to create something authentic, a future that honors the truth, not masks, and this might even renew the foundation of our family and our work." They spent the next hours drafting plans for the merger that were punctuated by pauses filled with honest reflections rather than guarded strategies. Every decision now bore the imprint of shared responsibility, both in managing spiraling losses and in nurturing the bond that had once been the core of their connection. As ideas emerged and plans solidified, a bizarre kind of peace settled over them. The business negotiations, once a battlefield of ambition and hidden agendas, were turning into a collaborative space where trust replaced suspicion. When the night ended, and they stepped out of the building into the cool air of a new beginning, silence was replaced by the soft sounds of distant city life, a reminder that the world outside was not waiting for the resolve, but cheering it on. In that quiet moment, with the future uncertain, but their hearts tentatively united, Elena reached out. The gentle warmth of Marcus's hand was a silent pledge that the path ahead, though fraught with challenges, was one they would navigate together. Under the glow of a street lamp, words were momentarily unnecessary. Their eyes met, acknowledging not just past grievances, but the promise of forgiveness and the courage to redefine what was once lost. In a tender, definitive kiss, both a farewell to old wounds and an embrace of hope, their renewed commitment was sealed. This was not the end of pain,